everyone, and welcome to NameHero. I'm Ryan, the founder and CEO. In this video, I want to show the differences between Web Host Manager and NodeWorx. So cPanel's Web Host Manager is the master control panel, and InterWorx's NodeWorx is their master control panel. We just recently announced that all of our VPS hosting packages come with a complimentary InterWorx license. So InterWorx is very similar to cPanel in the fact that it provides a master control panel, NodeWorx, whereas cPanel's master control panel is Web Host Manager, that allows either resellers or root server administrators to set up accounts on their server without having to log into the command line or do any manual work. But they're different in the fact that because of cPanel's new licensing structure, it's no longer one license is for the entire server. cPanel now licenses based on the number of accounts. Some of our customers are looking for a new, fresh, unlimited opportunity, a control panel that offers the ability to add unlimited accounts. So just recently with announcing this, the InterWorx comes free with all of our VPS hosting packages. It also means that there's some different pricing when you look at cPanel and Web Host Manager. Of course, all of our VPSs still offer Web Host Manager with cPanel, but it depends now on how many accounts that you plan on setting up. Someone that only plans on setting up 5 cPanel accounts will pay much less than someone setting up, say, 100 accounts. So you have those options. But now with InterWorx, you can create as many accounts as you would like. So for customers that are looking for that unlimited flexibility, we did bring on InterWorx as that option. And me personally, I've been using cPanel and Web Host Manager for nearly 2 decades now, or maybe even more than that. I think in the late 90s is when I first got started and then moved full-time to cPanel in the mid-2000s and really never looked back. But with cPanel's recent licensing change in structure, I've had a look at other control panels, and I've been very impressed with the development that's ongoing over at InterWorx, and so I feel confident bringing them on as an option. So in this video, I'm going to compare Web Host Manager, cPanel's master control panel, and I'm going to compare it with NodeWorx, which is InterWorx's master control panel. InterWorx comes free with any of these VPS hosting packages, and cPanel, of course, depends on how many accounts that you're going to create. So this video may help you decide, because obviously no one knows your business better than you do. So I feel like that resellers that need to have the ability to create a lot of accounts will want to go with InterWorx, and those that don't need to create as many accounts will go with cPanel or Web Host Manager. So now you do have the flexibility. So it's good, in my opinion, it's good to develop and have some multiple opportunities or multiple selections based on what's best for your business. So what I'm going to do is I've created 2 sample Hero 2 gigabyte servers, or 2 example ones, and I'm going to try to go through them kind of side by side, or kind of show cPanel or Web Host Manager and then show NodeWorx kind of doing the same task so you can compare and contrast. So if you're following along, I'm going to head into my client area and click on Cloud Web Hosting, and I'm going to bring up both VPSs. So I've got my cPanel one and I've got my InterWorx one. So inside of NameHero's client panel, you're not going to see much of a difference. It's kind of if you've been a customer with us, or if you've seen some of our other YouTube videos, you have your root login credentials here, which you can only see if you have 2-factor. But you also have a link to Web Host Manager here. If you order InterWorx, it looks much the same. You have your credentials here, but instead of Web Host Manager, you have a link to NodeWorx here. So again, it's just different links, kind of different colors, but pretty much the same structure. So let's go into Web Host Manager and let's log in. And I'm also going to do another video where I compare cPanel to SiteWorx, because with InterWorx, SiteWorx is their version of like cPanel. It's their end user version, whereas cPanel is just called cPanel for the end user. So it gets a little confusing. With cPanel, you have Web Host Manager, and with InterWorx is the company name, the software control panel, but then they have NodeWorx, which is the master control panel, and SiteWorx, which is the end user control panel. So a little confusing, but if you hang with me here, I think you'll get it by the end of this video. Let's get into Web Host Manager. So first, the login's much the same, especially if you're here at NameHero. You click Web Host Manager, And as a note, this is a temporary link, meaning it's going to go to an IP address with a self-signed certificate. That's set up because a lot of customers, when they first deploy their VPS, they don't have their SSL set up, they don't have their name server set up, so we send it to the temporary link. So if you get a privacy warning, you can proceed. It is safe. It is just a self-signed certificate. Okay, so now I'm logged into Web Host Manager, and if you've been in web hosting for any amount of time, it's likely you've seen Web Host Manager once or twice. If I go over here to NodeWorx, I can click to log in, and I've got a login screen. Let me grab my password. I've got it. I don't like to show that during videos, even though I do still change them up. But let's grab this here. And so with NodeWorx, I'm going to log in with my email address. And actually, I'm going to use this one. And my password. So the only difference here is I'm using an email address versus root, but I'm still using my root password that I used when I deployed my server. And I use an email address, so a little different. Okay, so side by side, when I first log in, here's the InterWorx dashboard by default. This is the default theme that we use on all of our VPS deployments at NameHero. And you can, of course, change this. And same here with Web Host Manager. It's the default view. You can always go to Classic and get the different icons, but I'm going to compare and contrast just against the defaults we use here at NameHero to help you make your decisions. And remember, a lot of the templating can be customized in both. Okay, so at first glance here, Web Host Manager, they list kind of quick shortcuts: create account, list accounts, adding a package, stuff that you would need to do quickly, and as well as managing your server, kind of looking at the processes and the service manager and the disk usage. InterWorx, I've got everything folded up here. At first, I can see I'm the user that's logged in, and of course, I can always go and edit this by clicking Edit. But I can have these drop downs. So I have ones for server status, or service status rather. It shows all the services running. The server at a glance, it shows me these historical charts of CPU and memory, and bandwidth too. And then if I hit this plus here, I can see server info. It also shows me my disk usage. So it's kind of the entire VPS at a glance on the main dashboard here, whereas Web Host Manager is more of quick links. I do have a load average on Web Host Manager, and on most of them. I know some you can hide this, but by default we show it, and if you click it, you get the process list. So it's a little different in the way it shows it. I know cPanel, you can get to service status, but you actually have to type that in or get it on the left menu. But if you type in status, you can get service status here. So this is how Web Host Manager shows the service status. So again, both of these, what you're going to find throughout this, both NodeWorx and Web Host Manager, they have a lot of the same. It's just kind of in different places. NodeWorx has a lot of charts, which is good for historical usage, to kind of look and see a trend. If you're seeing a trend of CPU, or this is a new VPS, there's not a lot of data, but over time, this will really populate. And we'll get a lot more usage. Whereas Web Host Manager is more text-based, not a lot of charts. I mean, they do have the daily process log, but not really visual graphs. So kind of a difference there, and I like that about NodeWorx. Okay, so if we jump down in here to some of these features, though, I think right off the bat, the big thing that I like in NodeWorx is the ability to create multiple NodeWorx users fairly easily. Right here on the menu, if I hit the plus and bring down all the NodeWorx options, you can see this is my master user, and it's just server admin by default. And I can, of course, go in here and change it to my name. I can change the email, which remember that's our login, not root. And then I can change the password of this user, which essentially would also change the root service password on the account. So if you want to change that, make sure you keep it somewhere safe. Make it hard. Use this generator, I recommend. Whereas Web Host Manager, you just have the root login, and you can create resellers to have access to Web Host Manager, to limit them to only the accounts they create or the accounts they own. You can use the Resell Manager to assign a reseller root privileges. That way you're not having to give out your root password to maybe another system administrator out there and without giving them full root access. So they do have the ability, it's just a little bit different. I like how InterWorx kind of puts that, easy right at the top. We'll just get into a couple of these features. I don't want to make this too long because, again, I do want to do a separate video for SiteWorx versus cPanel because this will get really long. So look out for more tutorials to get into the real specifics. But off the bat here, we've got languages, themes, API key, plugins, authentications, and subscriptions. So I'll just highlight each of these really quick. Languages, basically multi-language compatible. So, nowadays not everyone speaks English, which is completely understandable. It's worldwide. It's the World Wide Web. So, you can use multiple languages. And the same is true within Web Host Manager. You can set the language based on the resale user or based on the reseller's end users. So, for example, if here at NameHero, if we have a reseller that's, that speaks Spanish and all their customers speak Spanish, they could set their Web Host Manager to view in Spanish and their cPanel to view in Spanish, whereas the root user could still see their local language. For me, it'd be English, or native language rather. And so the same is true here with NodeWorx. You can delete the language, download it, or even use it. So you've got some options. And I think too, in Web Host Manager, you can copy these and you can configure specifics and even upload your own stuff. So very language. You can customize the language in both fairly easily. Themes. This is specifically for NodeWorx. So this is the actual, NodeWorx is what we're in now. There's multiple themes that they've developed that you can use. So if you, click through these and you like some better, you can click them and preview them and activate them. And for some reason, this is just showing kind of the basics on this one. Maybe if I click this, I'll preview it. No, it's still not wanting to preview it, but I could change the theme, just click use this theme and change it. One thing I like about this is you can actually download these templates or these themes and then upload your own. So you go to add theme and you could actually upload your own, or if you already have it on the system. So that's cool that you can actually download the one you like and kind of customize it for your business. I think as far as the master control panel is concerned, though, you probably want to do a lot of edits just because it's really only used by either the reseller or the master user. But anyways, they do provide excellent template functionality. Web Host Manager, there is one default, at least at NameHero, it comes standard with one theme for Web Host Manager. And that's the X theme. It's installed and all ready to go. If you wanted to change, you can see there is a theme manager. So cPanel's Paper Lantern, and we have another cPanel theme. These are the login themes, Webmail and Web Host Manager. So if I click Manage, you can see I can also download and make my edits or even clone and then re-upload it. So Web Host Manager and NodeWorx both have the ability to theme and template pretty easily. Personally, I don't like to do a bunch of edits because I like just to run the auto updates and have things run the way they are. And if I make a bunch of customizations when they come out with new features, then it's likely I've got to go edit that template. And so personally, I'm not huge into customizing, but it's your business better than I do. If you have the time and the resources to do that, maybe that makes sense. API key, this allows the ability to connect with third-party systems without sharing root credentials or user credentials. So it just gives a token that can access certain parts of the NodeWorx. And Web Host Manager introduced this not too long ago as well. If you go to API, you can see they've got their API tokens. So both have API functionality, which is great. Allows third-party vendors to integrate easily. Plugins, this is the ability, now we know API tokens, for third-party vendors to install their software and to implement it. Here at NameHero, we by default install and enable Softaculous. It's a separate license, but that comes free with all of our VPS hosting at NameHero. So does Let's Encrypt. And there's some other ones here that are built into InterWorx, but we do not enable, like R1 Soft. We don't currently support that at NameHero, but there's some other ones you can go through and see. The default ones we have enabled. Cloudflare, this is an extra at NameHero. If you want to use Cloudflare, we will set that all up for you. You just have to order its one-time setup fee of $29.95, and we can set up Cloudflare. And this is the same with cPanel, or Web Host Manager rather. They've got their plugins. You can add them. You can add third-party plugins very easily, and same with Cloudflare. If you want us to install that for you, we can. So, I think they're both very similar in that aspect that, they both support third-party vendors, and it's pretty easy to, add them in here. But they've got their kind of preset list of stuff. And Web Host Manager, at least in our template, we don't have too many customizations in here, but of course you can always add as many. So the good thing is you can be flexible with third-party apps. This is two-factor auth. Of course, Web Host Manager has this too. If you just go to two-factor. I do like how Web Host Manager, they have a lot of options here, and I'm always using this quick search because I've used it for so long. I know what the link is, but I don't want to scroll and find it, so I use that a lot to find stuff. InterWorx doesn't have as many options. They don't have that search, which, again, that goes down to just user preference, but, two-factor is important. Both have it. Subscriptions, these are notifications. Had something go wrong. This just says that your username for NodeWorx is subscribed. So since I'm using the master, it's automatically subscribed. In Web Host Manager, they have what's called the Contact Manager, I believe. I think that's what they call it. Yep. Contact Manager, to where you can send this stuff to email, ICQ. If someone uses ICQ, please post a comment and let me know, because I don't think it is anymore. But there's other ways you can be notified on a Web Host Manager server. I think InterWorx is just email, but and cPanel has other ones. Me personally, I just use the email from Web Host Manager, and then I can route those to devices as well. But again, it's just your preference. But both have the ability to let you know if something's wrong. Of course, if you're working with us at NameHero too, we can alert you of that as well. All right, so the next menu here is SiteWorks, and so this is equivalent to cPanel's accounts. So if I go down here to where's my accounts. Again, I always type these, so like account functions. So these are, like if I'm wanting to create a new account, a new cPanel, I do it under this menu here. And InterWorx, this is where I would create a SiteWorks account. So accounts is listing all the SiteWorks accounts that are within NodeWorx. So these are all like my users, my end users. And you can see I can edit them. Or first at the top, I can add a new one, or I can edit an existing, I can manage the IPs, or virtually log in to their SiteWorks account. And then I've got the nickname for the account, and this just can be anything, the username and domain, and then the usage of it. And in Web Host Manager, that's kind of similar to their list accounts. So where'd my list go? I just type it in here. So type in list. It's under account information. List accounts, you can see it's the same here. So I've got key diets, and here's my virtual login to cPanel and the IPs and all the information about it. So it's it's very similar listing accounts, and they've got a quick search, and of course cPanel's got a quick search too. So very similar in that aspect. Adding an account is very similar. Just click add an account, and then I can set specifics. If I compare that to cPanel or Web Host Manager, rather, I'm going to keep interchanging that, so excuse me for doing that. But create a new account. It's kind of your basic stuff, your domain and username and password. Same here, domain, username, password. If I get down here a little bit further, I can do options such as additional IPs. I only have one on this VPS, so I'm only going to see the one. But I can also specify the PHP versions that I want. So by default, we have the PHP selector, and you can see only 7.2.2 is selected. But if we wanted to give this account the ability to switch between versions, we could check them here and just save them when we're creating the account, or you can go back and edit that too. And with Web Host Manager, it just uses the default, whatever you have default in the system version. But then they do have a multi-PHP selector as well. They've integrated into cPanel. So both of them allow for multiple versions of PHP and the end user to select a specific version to their account. So that's good stuff. They also have, of course, you can give it a different package, and Web Host Manager has this too. So you can choose a package, or you can create a manual package, and you can also save it as a package. So if you are entering these values and you don't want to enter them again, you can just save it. And that's the same here in InterWorx. If you don't want to, if you don't have a package set up, which default we have an unlimited one, you could create a new one and select your specific values in there. Web Host Manager does have a features list, so these are like all the features inside of cPanel. If I go to Feature Manager, I can see it. I've got a default one, but I can, create one. I've got there's default disabled and mail only by that come with Web Host Manager, but I can add custom ones, and I can even customize the default ones to give users access to certain things. InterWorx is not that detailed oriented as far as like options. They do have specific features such as the unlimited stuff, the domains and add-ons and all that, add-on domains, which they call secondary. But package options is like can they do backups, CGI, cron tabs, edit DNS or SSL. Burstable means can they use over their bandwidth allotment. So it's not as specific. And if I get to like PHP settings, these are kind of interesting because I can also set the max children, max request, process management, or idle timeouts based on the user when I create them. You can do this in Web Host Manager, but it's not really during the account creation. It's actually handled inside of the multi-PHP section. So, both allow the functionality. It's just a little different how you set it up. And if I'm creating an account, I most of the time just use default stuff and then edit unless I know specifically what the user is going to need. Finally, they do have the option here because we have Softaculous installed. You can give them access or not give them access. And Web Host Manager, it's the same, except you do it through the feature manager. So I can search here, see Softaculous. I can enable it or disable it per the package. If I want someone to pay me more for Softaculous, I can or I can't. So it's a way to upsell your users. So account creation is very similar. Web Host Manager is a little bit more detailed, but both have pretty much the same core options. Shell users, this is where you give your customers or your SiteWorks users access to run SSH. By default, I've got it turned off. You can, of course, change this to make it automatic. But it's got the default shell, so you could use your normal bash, or you can even do you can change it here to like jail shell and stuff. Whereas Web Host Manager is the same, but it's just a little bit different. It's presented a little different. So if I go to Manage Shell Access, I can change it to normal, jailed, or disabled, and I can mass assign to users. So kind of the same in that aspect too. I guess at the end of the day is you can give your cPanel users or you can give your SiteWorks users SSH access. Packages, this is just what we were talking about. I can add or import packages to save me from having to create a new template every time. And especially if you're using like WHMCS to automate customer packages or deployment, you'd want to create these in here. And same with Web Host Manager. We can go into packages and add a package, edit or delete one, give an allotment of space to a specific user. So that just really saves time. And of course it's available in both. So pretty simple and straightforward there. This is for your backups for your SiteWorks accounts. So you can see this server is new and I don't have any data, so there's no backups. But I could basically select these accounts and I could back them up, a full backup, which is everything, or a structured only backup. And structure only is just like the options of the account. It's not all the data. But this will take me through a wizard if I wanted to. And I could send myself an email when it's finished. Whereas Web Host Manager, it allows these backups to be done inside of cPanel. You can generate a full backup, or they've got their whole backup configuration, which is quite detailed. I know Web Host Manager has improved this greatly over the last couple of years to where you can enable backups. And we can do compressed, uncompressed, incrementals. Compressed is like a zip file. Uncompressed is non-compressed and non-zip. Incrementals only, it's rsyncing the files that have been changed. And you can do all this cool stuff, such as checking the available disk space and your timeouts and your retention, weekly and monthlies, select per users. So a very detailed backup system comes packaged with Web Host Manager by default. They do have an ad here for Jet Backup, which is pretty good too. But it's, you have to pay for it. Whereas their backup option here is pretty simple. So, that's something that you might want to look at, if you can in SiteWorks. And again, I'm going to do another tutorial where I do cPanel versus SiteWorks, where the end user can schedule and set up their own backups a lot more specifically. And I also could restore if I had backups in here from here, but it's just much more detail oriented inside of Web Host Manager than InterWorx. But at the end of the day, both master control panels can back up. Import, this is very handy. So if you're moving accounts from another SiteWorks server, a cPanel server, direct admin, InSim, Plesk 7 or 8, you can import them here. It's a single import transfer. You can do a mass transfer. So if you have SSH login, NodeWorx can connect to it. And so this is root login. So if you have root access, if you're moving from another VPS with root access, you can do a mass account transfer. And this works for many control panels. It works for InterWorx, Plesk, InSim, or cPanel. So it works for these four, which are probably the most popular. And you just connect with root and it'll pull up the account list. I've used that many times here for InterWorx. It works pretty good. Plesk 9 and above, so Plesk 7 and 8 is a little different. So this is the importer for Plesk. So it allows you the ability to migrate or import data from other servers, and nice little wizard to do it. Web Host Manager, they have this ability too. They just, well, not recently, but they've got this transfer tool to where this is the same as the mass. If you've got SSH access. So the difference with Web Host Manager is you can SSH in as root, or if you only have the user, you can do that as well too, as long as the user has SSH ability. So you could pull it too, and this supports multiple control panels as well. And they've also got copy account from another server with a password. So if the user doesn't have SSH access, you can try to copy it using this tool. So if you have like the IP address, the username and password, you can also copy it this way. So you have a couple options here. And the same here, you've got the single account or the mass, same with Web Host Manager, as well as the Plesk import. So both have migration options. The command line tools I found for both Web Host Manager and NodeWorx are how I like to do it. But again, that's time for another tutorial, not for this specific one. Okay, then finally, SiteWorks has a Softaculous link. And this is because we've already installed and configured, and it comes with a free license with us here at NameHero. For Softaculous. So this is just the one-click installer that your customers or your end users can use to install, over 478 apps. Install, stage, clone, all that stuff. So that's right there. And Web Host Manager, if I just type in Softaculous, and again, this is specific to NameHero because if you're using just a plain Web Host Manager and plain InterWorx, it's not going to have this. But I also have Softaculous there, so it just brings it up in a new window versus the iframe here. So same features there as far as the auto installer is. Okay, so next we have resellers. I can list accounts, and this shows me all reseller accounts. Now you can see it's my master user is listed here as a reseller because technically the master account is a reseller because it's the one that creates the main child accounts for SiteWorks. If you wanted to add, someone to have extra access to be a reseller that can only control their accounts, you would do it here. You would just add the reseller and fill it out here. Web Host Manager has reseller functionality too. If you just type in reseller, can't spell, you can see reseller center, and you actually have to first create the user a cPanel. So this account was already created, Key Diets, and we added reseller privileges to it. So now the user for Key Diets could essentially, from their cPanel, have access to Web Host Manager and then create accounts on their own that they own. You can also give this reseller, or you can give a reseller in Web Host Manager root access as well, so you're not giving out your root login to team members or whatnot. But I guess in short, both have reseller abilities. So you can edit the for Key Diets here, I could edit the privileges and set an allotment. This reseller can create 5 accounts, 10 accounts, or they can create as many accounts as they want. It's only, they don't use 50 gigabytes or whatnot. And then I can also save feature list. If I want to give them access to specific features of the server. I like to Web Host Manager. They've got like basic privileges, like you got to have these, and then you go standard, package privileges, and then there's like additional plugins, and then global, and then there's super, and then of course root access. So very specific on the reseller. If we go to InterWorx, you can create the reseller here. Give them access to how much they can create and how much allotment are you allowing them to resell. Can they oversell? Web Host Manager has that. But I don't see exact specifics inside of there. This would be more of a package thing. So that's actually how you create the reseller in NodeWorx versus Web Host Manager. So both have the ability. Now if I go to packages, I can add a reseller package. And so this basically was on the same screen as previous. This just says, hey, I've got maybe a gold reseller package, and you can, sell unlimited space for 50 gigabytes. You can put caps or limits on your resellers. And again, with the Web Host Manager in Reseller Center, if I go to Edit Reseller Name Servers and Privileges, that's where I do it here. I can create what's called an ACL list, a feature limits list. So, I think that both of them have reseller capabilities. Web Host Manager is a little bit more detailed in the fact that you can get really specific. InterWorx allows the same core functionality, but just not as specific. All right, then we've got our bandwidth history, the bandwidth of the resellers you kind of see. And as Web Host Manager, they've got pretty good bandwidth reporting as well. You can view your usage, you can limit. And again, this will all populate, but I've got nothing on this. It's a brand new VPS. And also, I think if I go into here, I can view the specific reseller usage. Yeah, view reseller usage here. So this specifically would give me a report on what resellers are using disk and bandwidth and all that stuff. So again, both have the ability to view bandwidth and resources usage from resellers. All right, so if I go to System Services, this is managing the kind of core LAMP stack. First being Apache. So the Apache web server, again, is default with NodeWorx. You can use Lightspeed. Web Host Manager, likewise, is Apache by default, and you can add Lightspeed to that. So both have that ability. The controls in Web Host Manager are similar. For example, I can go to Apache configuration, and I can configure Apache right here. So, basically I can configure Apache without getting the command line. Some people are a little intimidated by that, so they can do it in Web Host Manager. And that's the same with InterWorx. I can stop or restart or refresh the service, but I can also modify some of these limits. Like I can even change the port it listens on, change my HTTPS port. Please don't do that unless you know what you're doing. And change some of my global limits as well without having to SSH in. And if I go down here, I can also, put what versions of PHP that I want to use on this server and make it available. I can also change my default system version. We do have PHP FPM and SU-PHP, so you can use either one of these PHP modes. And then these are all the Apache modules. So all the modules compiled inside of Apache are here. So if I compare this back to Web Host Manager, they've got the same stuff, but it's in some different spots. So we have our, kind of our Apache configuration. If I go into PHP and go to Multi-PHP Manager, this gives me the ability to, tell what account uses what version of PHP. So I just have one account, so it's using 7.1, but I could do inherit to inherit the system version, or I could hard select it. I could also edit my PHP FPM options here for this specific user, for this specific site. And I can also turn off PHP FPM, and I could modify my PHP handlers here. And again, these don't apply to PHP FPM, but I could change this to CGI, Fast CGI, or SU-PHP. Either one. I can even add the Lightspeed PHP handler as well as an add-on. So kind of similar stuff, but Web Host Manager, the biggest advantage Web Host Manager has when it comes to Apache is Easy Apache 4. So let's go there. So when you're compiling Apache, you have all these modules. And again, you can see these in InterWorx. You have all these Apache modules. Well, you can have all the same here, but Easy Apache allows you to easily compile these. So I can customize, and then I can select which ones I want right here, and it will automatically rebuild Apache. And it's not compiler based. It's really, really fast. I think InterWorx is still compiler based, and we have to do it from the command line, to modify or add these modules, whereas Easy Apache has everything in here. So if I wanted to add npms, Apache modules, PHP versions, if I want to take off 5.4 and add 7.3, I could do that in here. And the same with my PHP extensions. I can kind of build everything using Easy Apache. InterWorx doesn't have that much flexibility yet. That's something I would like to see them add into NodeWorx, because I think it's something that's much needed, will be much needed. For your average server, you're probably not going to need much of this customization, but if you're hosting customers, you will. So just keep that in mind. If you have clients that use basically the same configurations like WordPress, same applications, you're probably going to be fine with the defaults. But if you have clients that use a bunch of custom stuff, then you're going to need to compile more Apache and PHP extensions and modules. So that's something to keep in mind. Next, FTP server. So this just kind of manages how FTP runs, and Web Host Manager has the same thing. I just type in FTP. I can go to FTP server configuration. So, and for whatever reason, when I click this in InterWorx, it takes a while to load. It might be my connection. I'm not sure. I'm using Google Fiber, and they're a little slow today. But we'll wait for that to come up. But you can see in Web Host Manager, you can, you can really get really specific about how the FTP server operates, and you can secure it or make it specific to your situation. By default, Web Host Manager and cPanel, it uses pure FTP, which you can see they list the advantages and disadvantages. The advantage to pure is this less memory footprint, for the most part. Whereas InterWorx just has, at least at NameHero, comes standard with Pro FTP. So Pro FTP, you can see from cPanel, it uses more memory. The login notifications aren't available, and brute force protection is not available. Now, this is specific to Web Host Manager cPanel, but it does use more memory, I can tell you that. But then you can configure and customize. If you want to change the SFTP port, you can do that here, which is nice. You can also change your timeouts and limits. So, I guess in short, both have FTP, both allow customization, but just a little bit more flexibility in Web Host Manager. SSH, kind of your same thing. So you can, restart SSH, change the port, which is nice. See your users. You can modify the SSH config file right here in your browser, which is nice. You don't have to SSH in. You can also turn off your root logins right here and change your timeouts and your log level and privilege separation, which is pretty nice. For Web Host Manager, they've got a couple sections. So one, they've got their own terminal in here. It says, only use this if you know what it's doing. So they've got their own terminal you can enable. Again, don't use the terminal if you don't know what you're doing. But you can also add your root SSH keys from right inside of here. You can actually even generate them and import them. And you can also turn off your SSH password auth here. And then you can configure the access and reboot from right here. So it's got a little bit more detailed features in SSH than NodeWorx has. I don't see where to add, root keys, and this I might be overlooking of something. I am fairly newer to InterWorx, so I'm not sure why they don't list those in here. But I'll do a video to show you that specifically side by side. So these next features get pretty detailed. So as far as email is concerned, I guess the big thing is, does NodeWorx have email? Yes. Does it have webmail? Yes. Can you use IMAP and POP? Yes. Can you configure everything? Does it come with Spam Assassin? Yes, yes, yes. So same with the Web Host Manager. Web Host Manager, you've got all your mail features. You've got webmail. You can tweak the mail servers how you want them. I think they both have Horde and Roundcube, so that's on both the webmail client. So both do have webmail, and both allow customization of the email servers. So I don't want to go through all these options because there's a lot in here, especially when it comes to spam and stuff. But you do have all those options. And if I get into virus filtering, they do have ClamAV, which as well does Web Host Manager by default. So, or we've got it as a plugin as well. Inside of Web Host Manager. So ClamAV is on both, Spam Assassin, and all that stuff. So both NodeWorx, both Web Host Manager has your webmail clients. So your customers on cPanel or SiteWorks will have webmail, which when I highlight SiteWorks, you'll see that as well. MySQL. So at NameHero, we use Maria database for both. And I just type in MySQL and show you. So if I go to the MySQL Maria upgrade, you can see standard we have Maria 10.1. Now you can always upgrade this. It's recommended 10.3, so a lot of ours by default we have them upgraded, but the template is still 10.1 for those that haven't got all their databases up to speed, because there is some time on that. InterWorx, same thing. We have Maria 10.2 by default. and so you can see it's running, so you can start, stop, refresh. These are some MySQL values that you can modify in here versus having to SSH in. You can also change your MySQL root password. And it's in here as well. Inside of Web Host Manager, you can modify your root password. You can also set up remote MySQL servers, which we'll get to that in InterWorx as well, which is the next option. So for both NodeWorx and Web Host Manager, if you wanted to run a separate server for MySQL Maria, you could set that up. So it's a separate server, a remote server. You do it in here. Whereas Web Host Manager, you would do a new profile, and you could set up Web Host Manager to use a remote MySQL server. This is good for those looking for high available solutions, those looking that have big apps or looking for more performance, more redundancy. You can set that up. So both allow for it, and it's very simple to set up. Outside of MySQL, PHP-MyAdmin, both have PHP-MyAdmin, and it didn't take me in because I don't have a database set up, but also in Web Host Manager, if I go to PHP-MyAdmin, you can see it's on both. So PHP-MyAdmin is a GUI for your databases, and your customers will have access to this too. This is, for me, it's very important. I like to use PHP-MyAdmin all the time, so both do have that pre-installed and ready to go. All right, so DNS, obviously both have a DNS server. You can set up your name servers inside of NodeWorx, inside of here, your TTL times, and kind of configure your resolvers and all that. Web Host Manager, there's DNS in several places. So if I just go to DNS first, I've got name server selection, so I can use bind, which is default. Does use a little bit more memory. Some people like Power DNS because of the DNS sec that's built in. And these other options are being truncated out, or depreciated out rather, so no need to even discuss them. So you have some options for name server selection with Web Host Manager. You can set up a cluster for DNS, meaning that multiple VPSs would share the same DNS files. That way your customers, if you have a lot of customers, they would only need to use one set of name servers, and they would work for multiple servers. But then you have the general options, add a DNS zone, add an entry for your host name, delete DNS, edit DNS, your MX entries, zone templates, name server reports, park a domain, perform a DNS cleanup. Kind of all your DNS stuff is here. InterWorx is very similar in that fashion that, we can set up our name servers. We can set up our zone defaults or recursive or resolvers. We can modify our zones. We've got our zone template, and then we can see our customers or our SiteWorks accounts. Here's their records that we can edit or delete or modify, whatever we need to do. It does have synchronization, which is for a listening server. So just like their DNS clustering, you can do both. So if you have multiple servers that need to share the same DNS records, you can do that with both NodeWorx and Web Host Manager. Finally, NodeWorx has a network file system server built in. So if you have a file system that you need to be shared across multiple VPSs, you can mount it in here and easily have access to it. This is good, if you have a file structure that's shared amongst many different servers. You can easily mount it up in here and have access to it. Web Host Manager, it does allow for the ability to add partitions, but I don't believe it's not so much network file system. So that's a little different, but really if you're not using it, you don't have to worry about it. But I thought it was a cool feature that they have it built in standard. So pretty cool stuff there. Configure plugins. This is the CSF Firewall. So this is the default firewall that will come with NodeWorx, InterWorx as a whole at NameHero, and same with Web Host Manager. We have CSF installed by default. So I know some people don't like it. I love it, and we use it on all of our hosting packages at NameHero. So it looks the exact same. So with Web Host Manager, it's here. InterWorx, it's here. And NameHero, we have our custom set of rules that we add for you to protect your server. It's already built in, and so kind of the same stuff here. You can see this one's running an older version, so I could upgrade that as well if I wanted to. But CSF is on both, and so I think that's really good stuff. Finally, I've got a server health. This goes through the server aspects. This is a server in good health. Is something not working? Kind of goes back to the service manager. go to server status. So it kind of goes back to server status here in Web Host Manager. Remember on the InterWorx or NodeWorx dashboard, it showed a kind of a quick status. This goes into history and configuration. So, if I wanted to configure a specific service, I could click it, and I could show here what I want to configure as far as my service manager is. And Web Host Manager, I got my service status, and then I also have my service manager right here. So I could, what services do I need monitored, and do I need to be alerted with these? So same type stuff. These are system crons. What keeps InterWorx updated, NodeWorx and SiteWorx. And same thing here in Web Host Manager. If we type in cron, you'll see we have our configured cPanel cron jobs. Basically, the only time you need to use this is to change the time these run. So both have that. You can kind of customize and see them without SSHing in. The default firewall is disabled since we do use CSF, so no need on there. SSL certificates. This is your service SSL certificate. So this is like for NodeWorx, right? For users to use just the host name. This is not automatic, but it is free. And I've got another tutorial on how to set this up. So by default, NodeWorx has these self-signed, but you can easily use Let's Encrypt to generate these certs. And I've got a whole tutorial on that. Web Host Manager, if I go to Service SSL, you can see same thing. These are the services that use these SSL certs, but this is automatic. It's free and automatic. So when cPanel goes to update, it actually checks to make sure that all these services have an SSL cert, and if it doesn't, it tries to create one as long as it can resolve this host name. InterWorx, it's still a little bit of a manual process, but it's still doable, and it's easy, but I've got a video on that. So I think that my suggestion to the team at InterWorx would be to automate this, because Web Host Manager, it didn't used to be, but it has been in the last 12 to 14 months that I can remember automated. So that is something that's a little beneficial there. We get on down the list here of the server. So logs, you can view just some of the system logs inside of NodeWorx. cPanel is kind of short on actual viewing logs inside of Web Host Manager or cPanel in general. If I just type in logs, you can see I can view Apache logs or FTP logs pretty easy. But if I need to view account logs, then I actually have to go into either cPanel and go into like File Manager and download them, or SSH in. So I do like how InterWorx has some more logging that's available inside of NodeWorx right here. I just click Continue, and you can see it brings them up, in a little viewer too. So I have to download the file, which is cool. So I like that. Settings, this is just the general settings for InterWorx as a whole. So for both NodeWorx and SiteWorx, all the settings, your license key and, kind of customizing it. And Web Host Manager has both basic setup, kind of the basic stuff, and then they have tweak settings. So again, I think both have, the ability to customize, turn on and off, and, make things the way you would like it. By default, all of our VPSs are pre-configured that fit most sites for both either Web Host Manager or InterWorx. But if you want to customize stuff, you can, if you get really specific. Software updates, this is just, when it updates the operating system and InterWorx, as well as I can put an email address to be notified. My update channels, release or stable or beta. Same with my Yum repositories, and I can check for updates. Web Host Manager has an update manager as well. Go to Update Preferences. You can see for Web Host Manager and cPanel, I can select that. Daily, Staging, Operating System, and Spam Assassin updates. So just, both have the ability to, to run automated updates and to configure it to your liking right from the GUI. System graphs. So this is something that NodeWorx does have a advantage over, is they've got some of these charts. And again, this is good for historical. If you're managing your server from over a period of time, you can see spikes. Is it a MySQL query being hung? What's going on that's creating a high load, or why is the server moving slow? So I like these charts that you can see, which show historical usage. We can go weekly, daily, or monthly. New server here, so not a lot of information in it yet. And I guess this brings it up bigger. And Web Host Manager does not have a lot of charts. I think they've got bandwidth, maybe bandwidth charts, but not a lot of charts inside here. Maybe not even in here. So it's more text-based than Web Host Manager. So that is pretty cool. They've got that inside of NodeWorx. Going on down the list here, then I've got my IP management. So this is just managing all the IP addresses on your VPS. By default at NameHero, you get one IP. If you need more, you can add them. But this is where you can add them manually, but we'll do it for you. And same with Web Host Manager. We've got a IP tool in here. Add new IPs. Actually, if I just click IP functions, you can see everything. So I can add IPs, migrate IPs, assign, show, reserve, and kind of the same deal here. I can set which IPs I want shared or reserved or dedicated and all that stuff. So very similar. And both NodeWorx and Web Host Manager are ready for IP6. We do not yet use IP6. So when we do, it'll be available inside of there. Default sites. So when you create a SiteWork account, this is kind of the skeleton that is going to show. So it says here, this allows you to control what page is served when it's accessed by the IP directly, not the domain. When disabled, it'll show the first domain that's on the IP. So this is like do you want a default site when the IP is shown? If so, where do you want it mapped to? So you could actually map an IP per site. So if you have a dedicated IP address for a site, you can actually show that site's content for the dedicated IP. Web Host Manager, I believe that is default. So, when a site has a dedicated IP, it shows that site's content directly. So it's kind of some mapping for IPs. And then finally, they've got a remote assistant, and so does cPanel. They've got their cPanel, I think it's just support here. So grant cPanel support access here. So at NameHero, you don't have to worry about that. If you need cPanel support or if you need InterWorx support, we will provide that for you, so you don't need that. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, the comparison between NodeWorx and Web Host Manager. Both have pretty much the same features. NodeWorx is strong in some areas. Web Host Manager is strong in some areas. It really just depends on what you're looking for your business. The big advantage to NodeWorx is you don't have to worry about a limit as far as accounts. So if you're reselling a lot of hosting and you want to offer cheap reseller hosting, NodeWorx is a great option because you don't have to worry about a license. Whereas Web Host Manager, 5 accounts, I think at cPanel is $20. At NameHero we discount it, but it goes up and up. For 100 accounts, it's $45 going direct. I think it's $35 a month at NameHero. So the more accounts you have, the more expensive it is, whereas InterWorx is just one license for all. So I think that's the big thing that's really that most people are looking at right now. But it has a lot of the same features, a lot of the same integrations. And then I'm going to do another video again comparing SiteWorx to cPanel so you can see what the end users see, because I think that's very important. What's your customers, what's going to look like to them, and how can they control it. So I'll do that in my next video. But again, in a nutshell, that's the two master control panels. Remember, InterWorx is the brand. NodeWorx is their master panel. Over at cPanel, cPanel is the brand, but Web Host Manager is the master control panel. So it's Web Host Manager versus NodeWorx. That's the comparison that we've made in this video. So feel free to let me know if you have any questions. I will go into many more detailed videos on how to, set up specific services, and maybe I'll even compare them to setting up a specific or tweaking a service inside a Web Host Manager, but I didn't want to get into that too much into this video. So thanks so much for using. Remember, InterWorx is free on all of our VPS hosting. cPanel Web Host Manager, you can get a license as well. It will deploy automatically, but the price depends on how many accounts you need. Of course, with all of our basic hosting and reseller hosting, we currently use Web Host Manager, cPanel, and all those. So that's where we offer InterWorx, is with our VPS currently. It is a great option, though. I think a lot of you will really like it, especially for those looking for unlimited accounts. So thanks for watching and using us here at NameHero.com.